So even before I begin introducing them, I just wanted to say one thing. In the 11th hour of the last day, Governor Hochul signed the Birds and Bees Protection Act to ban and limit neonic pesticides in New York State. So you guys really, really helped with that by calling the senators and the assemblymen and Governor Hochul. So yay us. Yay New York State and Garden Club. So our speakers today don't need a huge introduction because most of you know them. But we have Michael and GG. And Michael is a retired educator who brought the gift of science to many young minds. GG is an accomplished, wonderful artist whose work has been shown in the US and internationally. Both of them serve on town conservation advisory councils, GG for Mount Pleasant and Michael for Pleasantville. They both have a series on Pleasantville Community TV, which is called Outside in Your Garden. If you haven't watched it, I strongly suggest it. Today, Michael is going to talk about walking New York's Nanny Hagen Brook, Pleasantville's Nanny Hagen Brook. His presentation will be focused on the flora of wildflowers, plants, trees, and fungi along his daily route. He walked it just all the time in all different seasons, and he's going to show us that. Michael had asked GG to illustrate his book, which she did using lovely illustrations, which we will see today. She will explain her process of developing her drawings. As I said, Michael won't be using the mic. Love that you guys are up here. So I present Michael and GG.
All right, I'm a little nervous. Normally I'm not nervous, but because I know everybody, I'm a little nervous. Tough group, yes. I hope you can hear me, and I would like you to sit towards the front because the screen's small, and I took a lot of pictures while I was doing the research for the book, and GG used a lot of my pictures, so they're not that big because I didn't want it to go on too long, so I kept multiple pictures per slide. Anyway, I did the research from after I retired in 2020, January, and I did it for the whole year and the beginning of the next year. And if you remember, it's a long time ago, but we had over 36 inches of snow that year. It seems like another world, doesn't it? And during February, January was dry, February was very snowy, March was snowy, and I sort of had a rhythm of just observing what I saw along the brook as I used to walk it. I've walked that piece of land, which is basically from Broadway and Lake Street to Palmer Lane for the last 25 years. So I've seen lots of changes in the ecosystem as well. So welcome, and I hope you enjoy. So Nanny Hagen Pond, this is Lake Street up here from Broadway. Broadway is about here. And this is Palmer Lane right at the other end here. In the middle here, this is the cottage school, and this is the village park around the Nanny Hagen Pond. And you might get middled up between Nanny Hagen and Nanny Hagen. Nanny Hagen Road is way down off Columbus, much to the south. This is the aqueduct that goes from the Catskills to the Kensico Reservoir, and it's the main aqueduct for New York City water supply, and it runs along this dotted line. And then in this spot here is really wild. Fina lives here, just by the way, if you want to know, I'm pointing out where people live. I live just up here. Shane's television studio is just here, and this is all wild and completely undeveloped. So I called it's a liminal ecosystem that's in between a lot of development. And GG did a lovely work on the map. So we laid the book out with GG's illustrations. And when I wrote the book, I was very hesitant whether I would ever publish it because I was not sure if it was any good. You got nervous, unsure author for the first time. And I sent one chapter to Gigi because she said she'd like to read it. She was my support a lot. And
I thought it was beautiful, and the rest is history. Now, what we're going to do today is totally different. You know, we've done this presentation before, but this is going to be different. First of all, Michael's going to do mostly plants.
all plants.
All plants. He's done a special presentation of all plants. And on the other presentations that we've done, what happens at the end is people want to know my process. I thought I was telling them my process, but obviously I wasn't. So today I'm going to go in detail about my process, which I have never done before. So I'm going to start with this illustration here. So in the beginning, I did a drawing with pencil. I don't know if you could all see it, it doesn't matter. But I wanted them to be 6 inches, and I knew they had to be digital. So I took the drawing, put it in my printer, and sent it to my computer. And then you have to play with it in the computer. But eventually I got an iPad and a pencil. Here it is. And I have a program called Photoshop. So if you can't see the difference, but I played in Photoshop with this to get this kind of a soft look of the cottony part of the cattails, okay? The other thing is, in the bottom there is a wild carrot. And so I really think Michael sent me this image
Yes, I think
of the
so.
wild carrot.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. And after I had drawn it and put it in the computer and put it in my iPad and sent it to him, he said, that's the wrong season. So this is what I had to draw again, the second time, and that's what made it there.
Yeah.
Now, the eye pencil, I have this little, see, glove that you put on, because otherwise, if you touch the iPad with your hand, so this protects it so you can draw. Very cool.
So I'd just like to read this section of the book. The seed heads of the wild carrot also have a fantastic shape. This is in late January. 3 to 4 foot stems are topped with beautiful star structures. The white umbrils from last summer are long gone, and the stems have since curled themselves into themselves. They have dried into stars. In the cold winter air, they open again and release seeds. Carrots grow wild on this patch of ground. They are biennials. During the first year, food is stored in the white taproot, and in the second year, all that energy goes into seed production. In this roaring wind, the seeds get picked up easily and fly away. So it's really that star is all the seeds of the wild carrot, and then they're just being blown. While I was watching, they were being blown into the wind. Also around at this time of year are skunk cabbages. So I sent Gigi the picture of the top, and Gigi, I think, found that one online. And this is not quite working,
okay,
but
right.
she wants to talk about...
So in this case, it's this kind of a collage. So I took the top image, and you see, made it black and white and put it on the right. Took the bottom image and put it on the left. Now, what I had to do was erase the background, obviously, right? There is a tool on Photoshop called Paint Can, and you could just hit a space and it will make it erase, or whatever you want, make it a color. The problem is sometimes you hit it and the whole thing goes. So what I had to do in many cases was take my pencil and go around each thing until, and then there's a collage of leaves on the bottom. Now, again, I sent this to Michael. He said, you got the wrong season. So what he said was that because the skunk cabbage is a
Thermogenic plant.
you got it, a thermogenic, it gets hot and it melts the snow. And this was in the snow. And so what I had to do then was make it, which this is hard because now I've got white on white. So I hope it looks like it's melting in the snow. Okay.
Which is exactly what it was doing. Yeah. Okay. This is
All
a
right,
little
this-
funky, this screen. So
Yeah.
this is a picture of a wild snowdrop that I found. Mostly you see them in people's gardens, but sometimes the seeds get carried, right? And they just germinate out in the wild. And so I sent Gigi, don't look at my fingernails or my fingers, they're not in good shape. I sent Gigi the picture because I wrote all about, how they're almost the first plants we see in the spring and how lovely that is, and how it warms the heart to me. So, Gigi.
Yeah, so then I found the second image, right? And I drew from that second image this on the iPad. But there's a lot of work that has to happen after. I mean, I wasn't happy with the leaves. They were sloppy. I wasn't happy with the way this dark lines and everything came out from drawing it. And so I worked on it, and the finished product is this. But it was interesting. I never really noticed in the snowdrops the inside, that green that he showed me particularly. So I
Okay.
learned a lot with this.
And they're gorgeous, right? No
Yeah.
question, they're gorgeous. Okay. This is really funky.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I want to focus on the spring ephemerals for a minute because they're such lovely plants. The lesser periwinkle, violets, and delightful Virginia spring beauties in bloom. The spring beauties, a native, are being strangled out by the lesser celandine, but a good number hang on here by the path. 5 white petals with pink stripes aglow. The stripes are nectar lines for pollinators, which lead to pink anthers and sugar. Spring beauties are generously sweet and visited by many native bees. The corms, fairy spuds, are edible too. I don't want to dig one, as the flowers are too precious and they feed my soul. And then I'll come to the next bit in a minute. Cuckoo flower, milkmaids, or lady smock. Petals are palest pink. So these are some of the pictures I took while I was walking. And again, this is the Virginia Spring Beauty. And you see that along the side of the plants. They come for about a week, so you've got to be there at the right time. Palest pink. This is a trout lily, which is one of the most interesting. You often see the mottle leaves about this big with the mottle characters on them, but you don't often see the flower because trout lilies have to be there for about 10 years in the right hot and cold, freezing, in order to flower, because the bulb digs itself into the ground. And only when it's about 10 inches underground will it actually start to flower. So many of them don't flower, but they're most gorgeous, one of the most gorgeous spring ephemeral flowers. This is a real unusual one. That's a ginseng. That's a Native American ginseng that I saw out there just in a little spot that's completely, this whole land is not being disturbed, which is like so unusual in Westchester. This is a ragged robin. I saw lots of those. Isn't that a fabulous pink petal? Obviously dog violets. These are common in blue and purple. This is a lady smock, and I actually get them growing wild in my lawn when I do my no-mow May. So those come up often. And then everyone's seen the Dutchman's breeches. And this is the native one. You've seen the one with the colored, the red, because that's the one that they sell in the nurseries. But I just want to give you a closer view of the spring beauties with the pink veins. And it's interesting, they have pink anthers too. Oftentimes pollen is yellow in plants, but in this plant it's pink because how it's worked with the insects to train the insects to come, right? So the insects have an image imprinted in them after many thousands of years of evolution. So the insects know that this time it's pink rather than orange pollen. Okay, more spring ephemerals. American yellow rocket is there as well, which is a really pretty plant. Lots of wild geranium or herb rocket. Herb robert, not herb rocket, herb robert. Star of Bethlehem is really a beautiful one that comes up there. And, oh, wait, my Canada Mayflower is not there. Let me get the Canada Mayflower, which is really a cute. And there's one spot where there's a crack in the rocks, big boulders, and that entire crack was filled with Canada Mayflower. So really lovely. And then, of course, Jack in the Pulpit. And Gigi, want to talk about Jack in the Pulpit?
Well, the only thing I can say about this is that I drew the Jack in the Pulpit, and then Michael saw it, and I had to move the leaf, right?
Sorry.
I don't remember whether it was too high or too low. What was it I had?
Leaf is
It was right
Same
there.
height,
Okay.
right?
What did I know?
So, Jack in the Pulpit, a large, striking Jack in the Pulpit tucked away in a beech grove. Quite the preacher with his exotic, toxic canopy. The spathe is strongly ribbed, and the three-part leaf stands aloof. This is the ribbing on the spathe. This one is putting up a male flower. This I found so interesting. I had to do quite a bit of research. If all goes well next year, it may put up 2 leaves and a female flower. When times are hard, it will revert back to 1 leaf and male. This back and forth may go on for several decades, which is really interesting, right? Yeah.
So does the female need the male, or?
I honestly don't know, Gigi. Good question, right? Jack in the Pulpit is an arum, which in Arabic means fire. So beware, cook well before eating the roots, called Indian turnip. Indians used to eat the roots. Okay, I talked earlier about the showy banks, and the stream runs along parallel to the aqueduct, and the showy banks were like just amazing. This went on for like 100 meters. You can walk the whole thing, and it's got the forget-me-nots and the celandine, just banks of it. It was gorgeous that year, absolutely. Last year it wasn't so good. I don't know, but it's been gorgeous. Throughout the book, I put in a little poem at the beginning of each chapter because I wanted to connect it to some poetry, and this particular one from Blake. To see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. It really captured what was going on with me when I was walking. Another fun, difficult plant to draw, right?
Right.
Gigi?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, what can I say? Again, there's a tool on the Photoshop where you can lighten and darken. So I drew this and then made it lighter, and then made it lighter, and then made it lighter until it looked as if it was white, because these are white. And then I used that same collage of leaves that I had used on the skunk cabbage that I couldn't use, but for the bottom.
Yeah. Ghost pipe's a really interesting plant. It's the only plant, it is a plant, it's not a fungi. People get mixed up. They think it's a fungi, but it actually has flowers, and it has, stamens and pistils like every other reproductive flower. And it actually gets its nourishment by hooking its roots into the mycorrhizal fungi, and the fungi get their nourishment from the trees. So they get their nourishment from the trees because they don't have any chloroplasts, because they're not green, so they don't photosynthesize. So they get their sugar from the trees via the fungi. So it's really clever interweaving of the web there, right?
So the fungi, what kind of plants grow on fungi?
This is the only one I know.
This is the only one.
that,
Right,
yeah.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
So that's why it's confusing, why we think it's a fungi. Why I always thought it was a fungi.
So in the summer, we get a lot of wildflowers along the aqueduct as well. The white bedstraws, there were just profusions of these. They're really tiny, tiny, tiny flowers, but huge clumps of them. the sulfur cinquefoils as well as the regular cinquefoils. The common yarrow, which we see a lot in our gardens, you know, yarrow, you're all growing yarrow. The bladdercampions, which are really nice, they're like little bells. And of course, red clover, there was white clover and bees. Absolutely, they love that stuff. One other one, which I think is a really interesting one, is the evening primrose. And when I was there, the evening primrose had a evening primrose moth on it. And this moth only pollinates this plant. This plant is only pollinated by this moth. And Gigi's lovely drawing of it there. Trees, lots of trees I observed. One thing was really encouraging to me because a lot of it is invasive plants, but most of the trees are all native, which I think is fantastic. There's a few non-native trees, but almost all of them, the weeping willow's non-native, the silver birch, but really most of them were native. The elm is endangered, as you know, from the elm borer. Okay. And I want to talk a little bit about beech. You want to talk about the beech leaves first?
Yeah, so I have 36 beech trees in my property that are dying because of there's a nematode that's taking, and so this is actually a photograph that I took of a tree, of the leaf in one of my trees. And then again, I made it into black and white and erased the background. But that's what happens. And then the trees, I mean, some of my trees are huge and it's really sad, but this is what's happening with the beech trees now.
Yeah, so beyond Palmer Lane, there's a little new subdivision called Pheasant Run, and there's a little park there called Pheasant Run Park. And in that wood, there's a lot of beech. So in this wood, the grove of ancient beech has been devastated by the new beech leaf disease. 40 to 50 trees here, ranging in size from around 6 to 36 inches in diameter, are all affected. The leaves are crinkly and dark, and many trees are seeing significant canopy dieback. Really suffering. I'm not sure if they're going to get through another year. One of my favorite trees, the sycamore. No, not sycamore, sassafras, sorry. Sassafras. And the sassafras leaf, really lovely.
That's a sassafras tree?
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, that big. Yeah, it's huge back there. It's fantastic.
Don't they have 3 different leaves, sassafras?
Yes, three long. Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about the underground world a little bit now. The underground world makes itself visible after a strong rain last night. If you go on the paths, you see the little white lines after a big rain in the paths. Those are the hyphal strands of the fungi. Mushrooms are the fruiting bodies, pop up. And there were so many mushrooms. It's absolutely wild. These fungi are the foundation of the forest. They link all the trees. Human actions are fraying and breaking these wild connections. Respectful relations must be maintained with the animals, plants, and the land itself. This is the only way to ensure our community's health. So these are all polypores, and I think I put a variety of polypores. They grow out of the wood. And then we're up to our fabulous fungi, and parasola and chanterelles, red chanterelles, and other mushrooms. Some of them are edible, some are not, so beware, right? And then Gigi did a really lovely drawing of the ink cap mushrooms, such delicate and transient beings, caps like a parasol, hence the species name parasola. And there'll be no trace of these fungi tomorrow, because they'll be gone. So you've got to be there on the day, right? Yeah. And then how about these guys, huh? Tasty shaggy mane. Definitely edible. And gorgeous in the evening light, right? With the fall colors of the leaves. Okay. The worst of the 4 invasives, which there are a lot of, Phragmites, tree of heaven, mugwort, and porcelainberry. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with these 4. And this one is bringing the lanternfly with it, right? Yep, the spotted lanternfly is coming because of that one. So this tree employs nearly all of the invasive toolkit. It has high seed production. Look at the seeds, right? So many samaras on the tree. The seeds are viable in many soil types. It reproduces sexually and vegetatively. Cut it down and root suckers will appear. So it's a many-headed monster. White-tailed deer find it unpalatable. And after they fall, the leaves leach out a toxic substance called ilothone, which helps the tree outcompete its neighbors. Leaves emerge earlier in the spring and stay green longer in the fall. Thus, it produces more sugars than its competitors. It's altogether a formidable arsenal when it has all of those things together. And unfortunately, it's spreading. We have unwittingly displaced the native species and now wonder why we are exiled and separated ourselves. As Wendell Berry noted, nature has more votes and a longer memory and a sterner sense of justice than we do. I love that quote. Puts it right there. Okay, so these are the endangered natives. Tiger swallowtail on a bee balm. There's lots of bee balm back there, hanging in there, competing with the mugwort. This is a viceroy on the bee balm. That's a butterfly milkweed that's back there. I didn't see a butterfly on it, but we all know that the monarchs use that. Goldenrod, of which there's quite a lot. And then there's a monarch on the swamp milkweed, of which there's quite a lot as well. This is interesting. The viceroy, it imitates the colors of the monarch, and it gets the protection for free without having to do all the work. It's very clever, right? And there's a monarch on the chicory. So monarch don't just get nectar from the milkweed. They'll get the nectar from anywhere they can, but they'll only lay their eggs on the milkweed. And Gigi, milkweed.
Yeah, so this I started with a drawing that I did here. And then when I put it onto the iPad, again, I was able to lighten some that kind of wispy stuff and made it pale gray, and then took just white with the pencil and went into it like that to get that feeling. And so I hope that explains it.
Late September, and the gray milkweed pods pop open. Seeds burst out and fly off. And I actually went around and helped the seeds fly off because, you just have to, right? A green pod, however, is covered in the black and orange milkweed bug. And I don't know if you guys have seen this one. Yes? Yeah. The same colors as the monarch and giving the same warning, I'm not edible. On this plant, there must be 200, some small nymphs along with the larger adults. These bugs, like the monarchs, also migrate south for the winter. So I thought that was interesting.
Are they harmful?
Harmful?
I mean, they're okay.
They don't harm the milkweed, no.
And they're not invasive.
No, they're native. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool.
And picture of one of the trees. This is the extent of the entire stream, starting at the Sawmill River junction down in the Four Corners. It comes up through opposite ShopRite, through the Country Club, across Broadway, through Nanny Hagen Park. This was the middle bit that I focused on. Then it turns north and goes up to Munson Pond. There's also a tributary that goes up to Bear Ridge Pond. And this tributary here, up Broadway, goes through my garden. So.
Yeah, so I've said this before, but I'm confused now. I'm still confused. I was confused when I was drawing this too, because this is Nanny Hagen.
Brook.
And this is Nana Hagen.
Right.
And the other map had two Nana Hagens.
Yeah.
Okay. If everybody gets that, that's great.
Okay. And then I'm just going to close by giving you one more of Gigi's beautiful pictures. And I've seen the bobcat on our street, and I've seen the bobcat on the other end of this there. And my neighbors have camera trapped and seen pictures. What a great beast. And the other fork of the road, the one less traveled by, offers our only chance to reach a destination that assures the preservation of the earth. Right.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's a picture I took.